Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is said to be a film that will end the sequel trilogy and the entire Skywalker saga in a satisfying way by director J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio. This is Mike Zero. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. So one thing to absolutely look forward to seeing in Episode 9 is of course exactly how JJ is going to utilize the characters of Luke Skywalker, Rey, and even Kylo Ren. But to me what's even all the more exciting is of course exactly how much material George Lucas was able to actually use for himself in Episode 9 and project that onto some of the characters in this movie that would conclude the entire trilogy and the entire saga overall. And the reason as to why I'm also very excited about this movie is that not only do we have, George Lucas on board, but also George Lucas was able, in order to take a lot of elements from the prequels and the originals into Episode 9. Now, these past couple of weeks or so, we've been learning a whole lot more about this film, and when it all comes down to one of the set leaks, this is where things begin to get very exciting. Now, specifically, it's described that one of the scenes that were shot during the month of January 2019 included a scene with Mark Hamill where it said that George Lucas was directing a scene with Mark on a vital moment in the film, where Luke is described to reveal a major revelation to Rey during one of the scenes in the netherworld of the Force. It said that George Lucas worked with Mark Hamill for at least 3 days for the scene that would be considered a historical moment once the film arrives, and that George allowed Mark Hamill to come up with his own lines for some of the scenes and let him improvise with Daisy Ridley to test the waters. Another sequence describes that George Lucas involved in was, of course, a sequence involving George was said to be helping JJ with the scene that involved a moment in which the villain was fighting in a saber duel against Rey and Kylo Ren, and that George suggested certain moves from the prequel trilogy era would be applied in that prequel trilogy choreography would specifically be used in the 2-on-1 lightsaber battle between both Rey, Kylo Ren, and the new villain in Episode 9. So I want to go over a couple of parts about all of this. Now, one of the big reasons as to why I am very hopeful about Episode 9 is because George Lucas was involved in this movie, not in a very, very small way, but actually in a very meaningful way, if you will. He was mostly involved with the scenes that involve Luke Skywalker, Rey, Kylo Ren, and the new villain as well. And he also was the prime, the actual example of why, Palpatine is coming back in Episode 9. And I think that when we look at Episode 9, the fact that George is back with JJ, and I think the fact that George is back and served as an advisor and a director with J.J. Abrams, it really does speak volumes that JJ and Kathleen Kennedy and Disney and Lucasfilm really needed George Lucas's help, in my opinion. I feel like this was somewhat of an act of desperation. I'm not quite sure if it was a genuine move by Disney. It seems like that they needed George for some of the scenes in order for this movie to feel authentic, which, it's a win-win situation. It's good for us, it's good for them probably, and we'll have to wait and see how everything works out. So the one thing that I'm really happy about though is that George Lucas allowed Mark Hamill to improvise, and basically he was able to let Mark Hamill come up with his own lines for a very important scene, a vital moment in the actual movie that involves Luke Skywalker revealing a certain revelation to Rey that would actually have saga-wide implications. Now, the fact that he let Mark Hamill make up his own words or come up with his own dialogue, if you will, to me that tells us that they really want this movie to feel very natural when it comes to the actors. And this also falls directly in line with what Oscar Isaac said about 4 to 5 months ago, that this movie was pretty much easygoing. It was very laid back, and a lot of actors had the opportunity to improvise and come up with their own pieces of dialogue and do everything that they wanted to do and stuff like that, which honestly, guys, it could be a bad thing for some of the lesser known characters out there. But for a character like Luke Skywalker, I am not in the least bit worried at all, since it's Mark Hamill and that George Lucas was involved. After all, guys, we gotta remember that George Lucas is the man who created Luke Skywalker in A New Hope, and how great is that movie, right? So, the character of Luke Skywalker being portrayed by Mark Hamill, revealing a big revelation to Rey that's going to have a massive effect on the Skywalker saga. The fact that George was involved in that moment really tells me that it's going to be a very rich moment and feel very natural. And also the fact that George Lucas brought back prequel trilogy choreography to the 2-on-1 lightsaber battle between both Rey, Kylo Ren, and the new villain in this film. I gotta say, guys, I'm very excited to see exactly, how the shots are going to be used and how George Lucas was able to direct some of the character actors in order to use their dialogue in very specific and unique ways. I think that it's going to be very apparent when we see George's work, when we see this movie come December, and when we see JJ and Chris Terrio's work. Because to me, George Lucas and his work just stands out on its own, right? In comparison to other people's work out there. So I think that the fans are going to be able to handpick and really pick out, oh yeah, George did this, George did that. You can tell. You're going to be able to see exactly what he was able to do. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.